Religion in the Making, Alfred North Whitehead. Chapter 1, Religion Defined. It is my purpose in the 4 lectures of this course to consider the type of justification which is available for the belief in doctrines of religion. This is a question which in some new form challenges each generation. It is a peculiarity of religion that humanity is always shifting its attitude towards it. The contrast between religion and the elementary truths of arithmetic makes my meaning clear. Ages ago, the simple arithmetic doctrines dawned on the human mind, and throughout history, the unquestioned dogma that 2 and 3 make 5 reigned whenever it has been relevant. We all know what this doctrine means, and its history is of no importance for its elucidation. But we have the gravest doubt as to what religion means so far as doctrine is concerned. There is no agreement as to the definition of religion in its more general sense, including true and false religion, nor is there any agreement as to valid religious beliefs, nor even as to what we mean by the truth of religion. It is for this reason that some consideration of religion as an unquestioned factor throughout the long stretch of human history is necessary to secure the relevance of any discussion of its general principles. There is yet another contrast. What is generally disputed is doubtful, and what is doubtful is relatively unimportant, other things being equal. I am speaking of general truths. We avoid guiding our actions by general principles which are entirely unsettled. If we do not know what number is the product of 69 and 67, we defer any action presupposing the answer till we have found out. This little arithmetical puzzle can be put aside till it is settled, and it is capable of definite settlement with adequate trouble. But as between religion and arithmetic, other things are not equal. You use arithmetic, but you are religious. Arithmetic, of course, enters into your nature so far as nature involves a multiplicity of things, but it is there as a necessary condition and not as a transforming agency. No one is invariably justified by his faith in the multiplication table, but in some sense or other, justification is the basis of all religion. Your character is developed according to your faith. This is the primary religious truth from which no one can escape. Religion is a force of belief, cleansing the inward parts. For this reason, the primary religious virtue is sincerity, a penetrating sincerity. A religion, on its doctrinal side, can thus be defined as a system of general truths which have the effect of transforming character when they are sincerely held and vividly apprehended. In the long run, your character and your conduct of life depend upon your intimate convictions. Life is an eternal fact for its own sake, before it is an external fact relating itself to others. The conduct of external life is conditioned by environment, but it receives its final quality, on which its worth depends, from the internal life, which is the self-realization of existence. Religion is the art and the theory of the internal life of man, so far as it depends on the man himself and on what is permanent in the nature of things. This doctrine is the direct negation of the theory that religion is primarily a social fact. Social facts are of great importance to religion because there is no such thing as absolutely independent existence. You cannot abstract society from man. Most psychology is herd psychology. But all collective emotions leave untouched the awful ultimate fact, which is the human being consciously alone with itself for its own sake. Religion is what the individual does with his own solitariness. It runs through 3 stages if it evolves to its final satisfaction. It is a transition from God the void to God the enemy, and from God the enemy to God the companion. Thus, religion is solitariness, and if you are never solitary, you are never religious. Collective enthusiasms, revivals, institutions, churches, rituals, Bibles, codes of behavior are the trappings of religion, passing from its forms. They may be useful or harmful. They may be authoritarily ordained or merely temporary expedients. But the end of religion is beyond all this. Accordingly, what should emerge from religion is individual worth of character. But worth is positive or negative, good or bad. Religion is by no means necessarily good. It may be very evil. The fact of evil, interwoven with the texture of this world, shows that in the nature of things there remains effectiveness for degradation. In your religious experience, the God with whom you have made terms may be the God of destruction, the God who leaves in his wake the loss of the greater reality. In considering religion, we should not be obsessed with the idea of its necessary goodness. This is a dangerous delusion. The point to notice is its transcendent importance, and the fact that this importance is abundantly made evident by the appeal to history. Chapter 2. The emergence of religion. Religion, so far as it receives external expression in the human history, exhibits four factors or sides of itself. These factors are ritual, emotion, belief, rationalization. There is definite organized procedure, which is ritual. There are definite types of emotional expression. There are definitely expressed beliefs, and there is the adjustments of these beliefs into a system internally coherent and coherent with other beliefs. But all these four factors are not equal influence throughout all historical epochs. The religious idea emerged gradually into human life, at first barely disengaged from other human interests. The other emergence of these factors was in the inverse order of the depth of their religious importance. First ritual, then emotion, then belief, then rationalization. The dawn of these religious stages is gradual. It consists in an increase of emphasis. Perhaps it is untrue to affirm that the latter factors are ever wholly absent. But certainly, when we go far enough back, belief and rationalization are completely negligible, and emotion is merely a secondary result of ritual. Then emotion takes the lead, and the ritual is for the emotion which it generates. Belief then makes its appearance as explanatory of the complex of ritual and emotion, and in this appearance of belief we may discern the germ of rationalization. It is not until belief and rationalization are well established that solitariness is discernible and constituting the heart of religious importance. The great religious conceptions which haunt the imaginations of civilized mankind are scenes of solitariness. Prometheus chained to his rock, Muhammad brooding in the desert, the meditations of the Buddha, the solitary man on the cross. It belongs to the depth of the religious spirit to have felt forsaken, even by God. Chapter 3. Ritual and emotion. Ritual goes back beyond the dawn of history. It can be discerned in the animals, in their individual habits, and still more in the collective evolutions. Ritual may be defined as the habitual performance of definite actions which have no direct relevance to the preservation of the physical organisms of the actors. Flocks of birds perform their rituals, evolutions in the sky. In Europe, rooks and starlings are notable examples of this fact. Ritual is the primitive outcome of the superfluous energy in leisure. It exemplifies the tendency of living bodies to repeat their own actions. Thus, the actions necessary in hunting for food or in other useful pursuits are repeated for their own sakes, and their reputation also repeats the joy of exercise and the emotion of success. In this way, emotion waits upon ritual, and then ritual is repeated and elaborated for the sake of its attendant emotions. Mankind became artists in ritual. It was a tremendous discovery how to excite emotions for their own sake, apart from some imperious biological necessity. But emotions sensitize the organism. Thus, the unintended effect was produced of sensitizing the human organism in a variety of ways diverse from what may have been produced by the necessary work of life. Mankind was started upon its adventures of curiosity and of feeling. It is evident that, according to this account, religion and play have the same origin in ritual. This is because ritual is the stimulus of emotion, and an habitual ritual may diverge into religion or into play according to the quality of the emotion excited. Even in the comparatively modern times, among the Greeks of the 5th century before Christ, the Olympic Games were tinged with religion, and the Dionysiac festival in Attica ended with the comic drama. Also in the modern world, a holy day and a holiday are kindred notions. Ritual is not the only way of artificially stimulating emotion. Drugs are equally effective. Luckily, the range of drugs for the command of primitive races was limited, but there is ample evidence of the religious use of drugs in conjunction with the religious use of ritual. For example, Athenaeus tells us that among the Persians it was the religious duty of the king once a year and at some festival in honor of Mithras to appear in the temple intoxicated. A relic of the religious awe at intoxication is the use of wine in the communion service. It is an example of the upward trend of ritual by which a widespread association of thought is elevated into great symbolism, divested of its primitive grossness. In this primitive phase of religion, dominated by ritual and emotion, we are dealing with essentially social phenomena. Ritual is more impressive and emotion more active when the whole scenery is concerned with the same ritual and the same emotion. Accordingly, a collective ritual and a collective emotion take their place as one of the binding forces of savage tribes. They represent the first faint glimmerings of the life of the spirit raised beyond concentration upon the task of supplying animal necessities. Conversely, religion in its decay sinks back into sociability. Chapter 4. Belief. Mere religion and emotion cannot maintain themselves untouched by intellectuality. Also, the abstract idea of maintaining the ritual for the sake of the emotion, though it may express the truth about the subconscious psychology of primitive races, is far too abstract to enter into their conscious thoughts. A myth satisfies the demands of this flippant rationality. Men found themselves practicing various rituals and found the rituals generating emotions. The myth explains the purpose both of the ritual and of the emotion. It is the product of the vivid fancy of primitive men in an unfathomed world. To primitive man, and to ourselves, on our primitive side, the universe is not so much unfathomable as unfathomed. By this I mean undiscriminated, unanalyzed. It is not a complex of definite, unexplained happenings, but a dim background shot across by isolated, vivid effects charged with emotional excitements. The very presuppositions of coherent rationalism are absent. Such a rationalism presupposes a complex of definitive facts whose interconnections are sought, but the prior stage is a background of indefiniteness relieved by vivid acts of definition inherently isolated. One exception must be made in favor of the routine of tribal necessities which are taken for granted. But what lies beyond the routine of life is in general void of definition, and what is vivid is disconnected. The myth which meets the ritual is some exceptional vivid fantasy or recollection of some actual vivid fact, probably distorted in remembrance, which appears not only as explanatory both of ritual and motion, but also as generative of motion when conjoined with the ritual. Thus the myth not only explains but reinforces the hidden purpose of the ritual, which is emotion. Then rituals and motions and myths reciprocally interact, and the myths have various grades of relationship to actual fact, and have various grades of symbolic truth as being representative of larger ideas only to be apprehended in some parable. Also, in some cases, the myth precedes the ritual. But there is the general fact that ritualism precedes mythology, for we can observe ritualism even among animals, and presumably they are destitute of a mythology. A myth will involve special attention to some persons or to some things, real or imaginary. Thus, in a sense, the ritual, as performed in conjunction with the explanatory purpose of the myth, is a primitive worship of the hero person or hero thing. But there can be very little disinterested worship among primitive folk, even less than now, if possible. Accordingly, the belief in the myth will evolve the belief that something is to be got out of him or it, or that something is to be averted in respect to the evil, to be feared from him or it. Thus, incantation, prayer, praise, and ritual absorption of the hero deity emerge. If the hero be a person, we call the ritual with its myth religion. If the hero be a thing, we call it magic. In religion, we introduce the magic we compel. The important difference between magic and religion is that magic is unprogressive, and religion sometimes is progressive, except insofar as science can be traced back to the progress of magic. Religion, in this stage of belief, marks a new formative agent in the ascent of man. For just as ritual encouraged emotion beyond the mere response to practical necessities, so religion in this further stage begets thoughts divorced from the mere battling with the pressure of circumstances. Imagination secured in a machinery for its development, though it has thereby been led beyond the immediate objects in sight. Its concepts may in these early stages be crude and horrible, but they have the supreme virtue of being concepts of objects beyond immediate sense and perception. This is the stage of uncoordinated beliefs. So far as this dominant phase, there can be a curious tolerance in that one cult does not war upon another cult. Since there is a minimum of coordination, there is room for all, but religion is still a thoroughly social phenomenon. The cult includes the tribe, or at least it includes some well-defined body of persons within the social organism. You may not desert your own cults, but there need be no clash between cults. In the higher stages of such a religion, there are tribal gods, or many gods within a tribe, with the loosest coordination of cults and myths. Though religion can be a source of progress, it need not be so, especially when its dominant features at this stage of uncriticized belief. It is easy for a tribe to stabilize its ritual and its myths, and there need be no external spur to progress. In fact, this is the stage of religious evolution in which the masses of semi-civilized humanity have halted, the stage of satisfactory ritual and of satisfactory belief without impulse towards higher things. Such religion satisfies the pragmatic test. It works, and thereby claims that it be awarded the prize for truth. Chapter 5. Rationalism. The age of martyrs dawns on the coming of rationalism. The antecedent phases of religion had been essentially sociable. Many were called, and all were chosen. The final phase introduces the note of solitariness. Strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, and few there be that find it. When a modern religion forgets this saying, it is suffering from an atavistic relapse into primitive barbarism. It is appealing to the psychology of the herd, away from the intuitions of the few. The religious epoch, which we are now considering, is very modern. Its past duration is of the order of 6,000 years. Of course, exact dates do not count. You can extend the epoch further back into the past in order to include some faint anticipatory movement, or you contract its duration so as to exclude flourishing survivals of the earlier phase. The movement is extended over all the civilized races of Asia and Europe. In the past, Asia has proved the most fertile in ideas, but within the last 2,000 years, Europe has been given the movement a new aspect. It is to be noted that the two most perfect examples of rationalistic religions have flourished chiefly in the countries foreign to the races among which they had their origin. The Bible is by far the most complete, accurate of the coming of rationalism into religion, based on the earliest documents available. Viewed as such an account, it is only relevant to the region between the Tigris and the Nile. It exhibits the note of progressive solitariness and religious idea. First, types of thought generally prevalent, then protesting prophets, isolated figures of denunciation and exhortation stirring the Jewish nation, then one man with 12 disciples who met with almost complete national rejection, then the adaptation for popular survival of this latter doctrine by another man who, very significantly, had no first-hand contact with the original teaching. In his hands, something was added and something was lost. But fortunately, the Gospels also survive. It is evident that I have drawn attention to the span of 6,000 years because in addition to being reasonable when we have regard to this evidence, it corresponds to the chronology of the Bible. We, in Europe and America, are the heirs of the religious movements depicted in that collection of books. Discussion on the methods of religion and their justification must, in order to be relevant, base itself upon the Bible for illustration. We must remember, however, that Buddhism and Mahomedanism, among others, must also be included in the scope of general statements, even if they are not explicitly referred to. Rational religion is religion whose beliefs and rituals have been reorganized with the aim of making the central element a coherent ordering of life, an ordering which shall be coherent both in respect to the elucidation of thought and in respect to the direction of conduct towards unified purpose commanding ethical approval. The peculiar position of religion is that it stands between abstract metaphysics and the particular principles applying to some among the experiences of life. The relevance of its concepts can only be distinctly discerned in moments of insight, and then, for many of us, only after suggestion from without. Hence, religion bases itself primarily upon a small selection from common experiences of the race. On this side, religion ranges itself as one among other specialized interests of mankind whose truths are of limited validity. But on its other side, religion claims that its concepts, though derived primarily from special experiences, are yet of universal validity to be applied by faith to the ordering of all experience. Rational religion appeals to the direct intuition of special occasions and to the elucidatory power of its concept for all occasions. It arises from that which is special, but extends to that which is general. The doctrines of rational religion aim at being the metaphysics which can be derived from the supernormal experience of mankind in its moments of finest insight. Theoretically, rational religion could have arisen from the complete independence of the antecedent social religions of ritual and mythical belief. Before the historical sense had established itself, that was the way in which the apologetic theologians tended to exhibit the origins of their respective religions. But the general history of religion, and in particular that portion of history contained in the Bible, decisively negates that view. Rational religion emerged from a gradual transformation from the pre-existing religious forms. Finally, the old forms could no longer contain the new ideas, and the modern religions of civilization are traceable to definite crises in this process of development. But the development was not then ended. It had only acquired a more suitable forms for self-expression. The emergence of rational religion was strictly conditioned by the general progress of the races in which it arose. It had to wait for the development in human consciousness of the relevant general ideas and the relevant ethical intuitions. It required that such ideas should not merely be casually entertained by isolated individuals, but they should be stabilized in recognizable forms of expression, so as to be recalled and communicated. You can only speak of mercy among a people who, in some respects, are already merciful. A language is not a universal mode of expressing all ideas whatsoever. It is a limited mode of expressing such ideas as have been frequently entertained and urgently needed by the group of humans who develop that mode of speech. It is only during a comparatively short period of human history that there has existed any language with an adequate stock of general terms. Such general terms require a permanent literature to define them by their mode of employment. The result is that the free handling of general ideas is a late acquirement. I am not maintaining that the brains of men were inadequate for the task. The point is that it took ages for them to develop first the appliances and then the habits which made the generality of thought possible and prevalent. For ages, existing languages must have been ready for development. If men had been in contact with a superior race, either personally or by survival of their literature, a process which requires scores or even hundreds of generations might have been attended, so as to have been effected almost at once. Such, in fact, was the latter history of the development of the races of Northern Europe. Again, a social system which encourages developments of thought can procure that advent. This is the way in which the result was first obtained. Society and language grew together. The influence of the antecedent type of religion, ceremony, mythical, and sociable, has been great, and the estimates as to its value diverse. During the 1,000 years preceding the Christian era, there was a peculiarly intense struggle on the part of rationalism to transform the more primitive type. The issue was a new synthesis which, in the forms of the various great religions, has lasted to the present day. A rational generality was introduced into the religious ideas, and the myth, when retained, was reorganized with the intention of making it an account of verifiable historical circumstances which exemplified the general ideas with an adequate perfection. Thus, rational criticism was admitted in principle. The appeal was from the tribal custom to the direct individual intuition, ethical, metaphysical, or logical. For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God was more than burnt offerings, are words which Hosea ascribes to Jehovah, and he thereby employs the principles of individual criticism of tribal custom, and bases it upon direct ethical intuition. In this way, the religions evolved towards more individualistic forms, shedding their exclusively communal aspect. The individual became the religious unit in place of the community. The tribal dance lost its importance compared to the individual prayer, and for the few, the individual prayer merged into justification through individual insight. So today it is not France which goes to heaven, but individual Frenchmen, and it is not China which attains nirvana, but Chinamen. During this epoch of struggle, as in most religious struggles, the judgments passed by the innovators on the less developed religious forms were very severe. The condemnation of adultery pervades the Bible, and there are traces of a recoil which go further. I despise your feast day, writes Amos, speaking in the name of Jehovah. Such criticism is wanted. Indeed, history down to the present day is a melancholy record of the horrors which can attend religion: human sacrifice, and in particular the slaughter of children, cannibalism, sensual orgies, abject superstition, hatred as between races, the maintenance of degrading customs, hysteria, bigotry, can all be laid at its charge. Religion is the last refuge of human savagery. The uncritical association of religion with goodness is directly negated by plain facts. Religion can be and has been the main instrument for progress, but if we survey the whole race, we must pronounce that it generally has not been so. Many are called, but few are chosen. If you're interested in me reading the rest of them, feel free to leave a comment or something, but I'm stopping now. Hope you enjoyed it.